Bears fans, what an atmosphere surrounding this team right now. Chicago is navigating a season filled with unexpected twists, and even with the bumps along the way, the energy around this group feels different. Every week brings a new challenge, yet somehow the Bears keep punching back, and that resilience alone has started shifting conversations across the league. When you look at the standings, when you look at the context and the injuries and the constant adjustments, it becomes harder to ignore how much this coaching staff has squeezed out of a roster that has rarely been fully healthy. It is not just about game plans. It is the way this team keeps responding. And with the division being as competitive as it is, any step forward becomes twice as impressive. There's a lot of talk right now about how the race for Coach of the Year is shaping up, and the discussion naturally becomes louder when a team like Chicago starts stacking wins, even when the circumstances get complicated. Some coaches are being pushed as clear favorites, and sure, they have their cases, but when you put the Bears situation side by side with what the other contenders are dealing with, it becomes pretty obvious that the path in Chicago has been far more turbulent. If this team ends up reaching double-digit victories and actually takes control of the division, you would have to be purposely ignoring the bigger picture not to recognize the impact of that. No one is saying awards should be handed out automatically, but you cannot dismiss the idea that what the Bears have done would instantly put their coach in the thick of the conversation. And the funny part is that even with all of this buzz around Chicago's growth, it still feels like the national conversation is behind the reality of what the team has shown. They keep winning the kind of games that past Bears teams would have let slip away, and that is usually the first sign that a culture is shifting. If this group actually reaches the postseason and finds a way to make some noise, the narrative around this franchise could change faster than anyone expected. That alone would be something the fan base has waited years to feel again. Speaking of waiting, a lot of you have been asking about visits to Chicago, meetups, things like that, and it is always fun hearing how many people want to be part of that energy around the team. Life gets complicated, especially when young kids are involved, and planning anything during the season becomes a juggling act. But it is still something that stays on the radar, because few things beat the atmosphere in Chicago when sports are buzzing. The idea of catching a game at Wrigley or just walking around the city on a warm day is enough to keep that hope alive for the next window of opportunity. And of course, as the Bears keep building momentum, the conversations about improving the roster in the coming months naturally start heating up too. Fans love the idea of bringing in a superstar pass rusher, and understandably so, because every great defense in this league eventually needs that one player who can wreck a game when it matters most. But acquiring someone like that is never cheap, and once you start talking about elite names, the cost skyrockets fast. It is one thing to trade a first-round pick. It is another thing entirely when the asking price becomes multiple first-rounders plus additional assets. Still, when a team starts winning at a high level and feels close to a championship window, the desire to push all chips and become stronger. If Chicago finishes the season with around 11 wins and shows it can hang with anyone in the postseason, the front office might reach a point where it says, okay, this is the move that takes us from good to dangerous. Even with all the hypothetical scenarios people throw around, the present-day roster still brings plenty of questions about who stays and who might not be part of the long-term plan. The running back rotation is one of those situations that never seems to stay quiet for long. The production has been solid, the roles have been defined pretty clearly, and the combination has looked effective more often than not. The challenge becomes what to do moving forward, especially because running back careers tend to fluctuate quickly. Keeping the current setup for one more year would not be unreasonable at all, especially since making a long-term commitment at that position is always risky. Chicago has a promising young back who is clearly carving out a role, and adding a mid-round rookie to the mix next year could create a balanced trio that keeps the offense fresh without putting too much mileage on any one player. On the defensive side, there is curiosity about how some returning players will look once they are fully healthy again. Chicago's defense has been one of the anchors of this entire season, and getting key contributors back into the lineup at the right time could be a massive boost. When linebackers play at a high level in this system, you can feel the difference instantly, especially with how much this defense relies on clean communication and disciplined pursuit. Missing starters never helps, but if those guys return anywhere near the form they had earlier in the year, the front seven will gain the stability it needs heading into the final stretch. Contract discussions always hover in the background too, particularly in the secondary, where several players have made strong impressions throughout the season. It is complicated to figure out who should get extended, who should play out the year, and who might become a long-term cornerstone. Making those decisions while the team is winning is even harder because momentum can influence perception. Some of these defensive backs have delivered big moments that fired up the entire roster, and when plays like that happen in the middle of intense games, they stick with coaches and fans. Glimpses of swagger, leadership, and physicality do not always guarantee an extension, but they definitely make the front office think twice before letting a player walk. Even when people ask about potential late-season additions, the reality is that once the calendar hits this stage of the year, the list of available players shrinks dramatically. Most teams ride with what they have, relying on development, coaching, and internal adjustments. Every once in a while, a veteran gets released or a recognizable name hits the market, but those situations tend to be rare and not always impactful. Right now, the Bears look like a team that prefers to trust the depth they have built rather than chase last-minute fixes. As for matchups, predictions, and playoff hypotheticals, that is the kind of conversation that grows louder every week. Fans want to know who the Bears would rather see, who they match up better with, which opponent feels more favorable, and which team brings more problems. Some fan bases may panic at the idea of facing a divisional rival again, but Chicago does not have much reason to fear anyone at the moment. Confidence does not mean guaranteed success, but when a team is playing physical football, taking care of the ball, and competing until the final whistle, it becomes harder to intimidate them. When Bears fans look at this season and try to understand how this team has managed to carve out an identity in the middle of so many adjustments, it becomes clear that the biggest shift has been confidence. Not the loud kind, but the type that builds quietly, drive after drive, stop after stop, until suddenly the entire sideline feels different. You can see it in the way the defense attacks the line of scrimmage, in the way the offense has stopped folding in late-game moments, and in the way younger players have embraced larger roles without hesitation. That change does not come from luck or from one good week. It comes from months of laying a foundation and refusing to let setbacks break the structure. Every time the Bears lose a key contributor, someone else steps into the spotlight. And that kind of resilience is not something you can fake. The conversation about contender status always feels premature until suddenly it is not. People outside Chicago keep asking if this group is actually close to making real noise. And the truth is that teams rarely announce that kind of transformation ahead of time. They just play themselves into the picture. When you are sitting on a strong record deep into the year, when you have proven that you can beat playoff-level opponents, and when you still have room to grow, the window can open faster than expected. One signature win can shift everything. Beat a heavyweight, shake up the standings, and suddenly no one wants to be the team matching up with you in the postseason. Chicago is flirting with that territory, and the players know it. You can hear it in their interviews. You can see it in the way they react to big plays. They're not surprised anymore. They expect to win. Matchups always matter in this league, and the Bears have reached a point where analyzing who they would prefer to face actually feels like a legitimate conversation instead of a fantasy. Some teams look dangerous on paper, but come into the playoffs limping. Others sit at the top of their divisions, but rely heavily on one or two stars. And if those players get dinged up, the entire energy shifts. Chicago, meanwhile, has built its success on depth, versatility, and a defense that tightens as the field shortens. That kind of formula works when the pressure ramps up. It is no coincidence that their defensive front has started generating more disruption as the season wears on. When you combine physical interior alignment with an edge rusher who can dictate protections, the entire unit becomes more unpredictable. And that unpredictability is what playoff teams fear. And speaking of matchups, one of the biggest talking points this week has been the offensive line Chicago is about to face. Whenever an opponent shows vulnerability on the right side, defensive players perk up, especially guys who thrive off snapping the rhythm of an offense before it even begins. The Bears have watched enough tape to know that the interior pressure could become a real factor. And when you add the possibility of winning battles on the edge, it creates opportunities to force mistakes. A quarterback under consistent harassment stops trusting his reads. A run game that usually builds confidence on early downs becomes hesitant. Those plays pile up, and by the time the fourth quarter arrives, the momentum has shifted completely. All of this ties back into the team's overall growth. Chicago has reached a point where young players are not just filling gaps. They are elevating the roster. You can see it in the way the secondary communicates, in the way the linebackers close space, and in the way the rookies and second-year guys have stopped playing like rookies or second-year guys. When a defensive back steps into a game and immediately starts chirping, standing up for teammates, or delivering a momentum-changing hit, that is the kind of edge that ignites an entire defense. Those flashes of fire on the field often tell you more than a highlight reel ever will. They reveal confidence, leadership, and a belief in the system being run. And that system is finally paying off. The Bears are no longer bending on every long drive. They're not giving up cheap yards in crucial moments. Instead, they are forcing offenses to earn everything. And most teams do not have the patience to do that for 60 minutes. A well-timed pass breakup here, a perfectly read screen there, a run stuffed at the line when the crowd is roaring. It all adds up. Suddenly it becomes 3rd and long, and Chicago pins its ears back and brings heat. Even if the sack does not come, the quarterback feels the footsteps. The clock speeds up. Throws sail. Opportunities arrive. That is how defenses take over games without needing a superstar at every position. The offense, meanwhile, has quietly adjusted in ways that have gone under the radar. The play calling has catered more toward what the unit does best, and the players have responded by executing with more rhythm. Balancing the backfield has helped maintain consistency, and the line has given enough stability for the offense to stay ahead of the sticks. When a team avoids falling into desperation mode, the entire playbook opens up. Chicago has found ways to attack mismatches, to stretch the field when needed, and to use movement pre-snap to create easier windows. It is not always flashy, but winning football rarely is. Sometimes the best thing you can do is avoid mistakes, keep drives alive, and trust your defense to give you chances. As for the fans wondering how far the Bears are from reaching contender status, the answer feels less dramatic than people might think. It does not take many pieces to turn a good team into a dangerous one. One more consistent pass rusher. One more reliable offensive weapon. Another offseason of growth for the young core. A season that started with cautious optimism could end with Chicago entering the next year with legitimate expectations. And that is how it usually happens in this league. The leap from hope to belief happens quickly. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Chicago Bears. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL world is buzzing with whispers that refuse to be ignored. Michael Thomas, the prolific wide receiver whose name has become synonymous with elite route running and jaw-dropping catches, is reportedly leaving the New Orleans Saints. Sources close to the situation suggest that Thomas has made the shocking decision to don a new uniform, the Chicago Bears. For years, Thomas has been the heartbeat of the Saints' offense, carving defenses apart with precision and flair. But murmurs of frustration have circulated for some time, hinting at tension between the superstar receiver and the Saints front office. Some insiders claim that Thomas felt his prime years weren't being maximized in New Orleans, prompting what now appears to be a career-defining move. The Bears, a franchise hungry for a game-changer at wideout, seem to have seized the opportunity, and the mere thought of Thomas running routes alongside Chicago's quarterbacks has sparked excitement in fan bases far beyond the Windy City. Analysts are already speculating about the seismic impact this transfer could have on the Bears' offense. Michael Thomas is not just a receiver. He's a magnet for defensive attention, a player whose presence can transform schemes and create opportunities for those around him. Imagine him lining up with Chicago's receiving core, stretching the field and demanding double coverage every play. Suddenly, the Bears' passing game feels like a different beast entirely. The trade, if confirmed, could mark one of the most intriguing shifts of the season, a bold gamble that places the Bears in the spotlight as a team willing to swing for the fences. Meanwhile, in New Orleans, fans are left to reconcile with the loss of a cornerstone talent. Social media feeds are aflame with speculation, disappointment, and, inevitably, debate about whether the Saints mismanaged the situation or if Thomas's departure was inevitable. Some pundits argue that this could signal a new chapter for both parties. Thomas seeking a fresh start, and the Saints embracing a roster shakeup that might redefine their offensive identity. The NFL rumor mill rarely burns this bright without consequence. If even a fraction of these reports holds true, the league could be in for a season defined as much by off-field drama as on-field heroics. One thing is certain: wherever Michael Thomas lands, the spotlight follows, and the chatter won't die down anytime soon. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Chicago Bears, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.